everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur, and we are a little frazzled after a couple technical issues, so we apologize for being late, but we have found a little bit of a workaround that will work for tonight, and we're going to have to figure out how we're going to solve that moving forward. But before all of that, Saur, before 20 minutes ago when this all went up in flames, how were you feeling before all of this?
No, I'm frazzled. You're not frazzled. I'm frazzled. Let's just move on.
You know what might help? Talking about
uh,
Inter Miami. I don't know if you're going to feel better, but you're certainly going to get distracted. And we'll just go straight into it. The international break is going on right now, the September international break. And so Inter Miami hasn't played since that Seattle Sounders loss. And I don't know if this was a much needed break, but it has given us, as Inter Miami fans, an opportunity to step back, kind of take stock of what's going on with this year. And it was sort of a good moment to do that because it came right after the end of the Leagues Cup. Before we get into the main topic of the day, which is how does Inter Miami finish this season in a successful way, there are a couple things we should talk about first. And I want to start with Ray Hudson, who announced that he was retiring from broadcasting over the last couple of days. I believe it was yesterday. And for those that do not know or recognize that name, from an Inter Miami perspective, he called many a game for the Herons over the first couple years. It was only when the Apple TV deal came in and they sort of stopped localizing the broadcast crews and made it national that Ray Hudson was sort of off the Inter Miami beat. But if you look back at big moments in Inter Miami history and you hear something like magisterial, that is Ray Hudson and his iconic voice. And so for Inter Miami, he played an important role for the fans. But even in the history of South Florida soccer, he was with many iterations of the Fort Lauderdale Strikers in the late 70s, in the 80s, in the early 90s. He was the coach of the Miami Fusion in the MLS back in 2001 when they won the Supporters' Shield. So he has a long history of being an important part of the South Florida soccer scene. He announced he was retiring from broadcasting, and he was still doing Champions League and maybe some Serie A. Like, he was still doing big soccer content up until the end of this past season. So a real sort of day one for Inter Miami and a huge voice in the Inter Miami soccer community has announced he's retiring, and we wanted to start by sort of wishing him all the best and thanking him for some magisterial calls on some incredibly big Inter Miami moments.
yeah, absolutely. Next. I'm still frazzled.
Okay, then let's talk about Luis Suarez, who got
No,
suspended.
next episode. Next episode.
Okay.
Man. No, I'm
Just
kidding. I'm kidding. I'll get back into my composure mode. First of all, congratulations to Ray Hudson for a fantastic career, and he's earned the retirement. So good for him. Luis Suarez, maybe we can skip, but that's an important one that we want to talk about.
Luis Suarez suspended 3 MLS games for the spitting incident. And Saur, my big question to you is, how do you feel about Javier Mascherano?
Not good, not great. Maybe if he finishes the next 9 games with victories after victories, I think it's going to be better. But as of this moment, I have no confidence, and I am not that impressed with him. Also, 3-game ban for Luis Suarez in the MLS. I think that's fair enough.
I do want to stop on Luis Suarez for a minute because he's in effect getting a 9-game suspension.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel great about that. Not because I think spitting is okay. And if the traditional punishment for spitting on an opponent is 9 games, fine. Like, I think that's totally fair. I don't have any problem with the punishment for Luis Suarez. I did have an incredible and overwhelming sense that this player was treated unfairly by the standards and guidelines put into place. By people across the MLS because they hate Inter Miami, and B, a lot of Inter Miami fans because they are seemingly unhappy with Luis Suarez's performance and attitude and all these other things. And certainly Luis Suarez has a history of being a lacking sportsmanship is maybe the best way to put it. And so if anyone doesn't like Luis Suarez, I think that's totally plausible. And I don't know if either of us would say he's a great guy, but that doesn't mean you should be punished in a way that's not commensurate with other punishments for similar incidents. And I think you can see that even in the punishment he got, which is sort of an extraordinary punishment for what he did. People were still upset that it wasn't enough. And when that happens, you can tell that it's not that they wanted justice, it's that they wanted to sort of have their anger justified. And a lot of that anger comes not from that one individual moment, but from sort of a long-standing coalition of incidents and perceived incidents related to Inter Miami or to Luis Suarez specifically. And so it's a really harsh punishment. And the next time there's a spitting incident, and there will be over the next year or two, like I think we need to have a long conversation about this new precedent that was set. So Luis Suarez missing.
Here's my question to you, though. Has there been a precedent for such an action previously? And has there been a spitting incident in the past where a player has received a lesser ban?
Last year, Hector Herrera for the Houston Dynamo spit at a referee and got a 3-game ban in the MLS. So this is a 9-game ban. I also, just crossing sports, there were a couple other spitting incidents over the last week. On Thursday night, a Philadelphia Eagle player in American football spit on Dak Prescott for the other team. He was kicked out of that was like the first 10 seconds of the game. He was kicked out of the game, and the NFL has announced that was going to be his only suspension, is that one game that he missed. So, again, I think I understand soccer and American football are different sports, and I also understand that what Luis Suarez did was certainly over the top, and perhaps befitting of a stronger punishment than what a normal spitting incident would demand. But this is, I think, very excessive. And if this is the new standard, I'm okay with it because, again, spitting is a dehumanizing act, in my opinion. But, the next time this happens, it can't be a 3-game suspension or a 2-game suspension.
I'm fine with it, honestly. I agree with you. It's a deplorable act. It's terrible, and I cannot defend Suarez in any way. Whatever punishment comes from the officials, that's fine. I think you said it right. Moving on, if there's another incident like this, the offense needs to have a similar sort of a punishment, and it can't just be a 3-game punishment. Now, some people would argue, oh, it's the same as Hector Herrera, who got 3 games off in the MLS, but Luis Suarez has also got 6 games suspension in the Leagues Cup. So if he did the act in the Leagues Cup and the punishment comes from the Leagues Cup, I'm not sure why the MLS is getting involved and adding those 3 games to the loop, or why there's an overall cumulative 9 games ban. Again, I'm fine as long as moving forward, there's a similar sort of a punishment that is handed out to such a similar action. And that, I think, is all I want to say on this incident.
Yeah, and then just to close this conversation, Toto Avila, Sergio Busquets, Maxi Falcone, there were some other players involved in the sort of action after the game, and none of them were given any sort of additional punishment by the MLS. So as far as suspensions, we heard last week, it'll be a 6-game Leagues Cup suspension for Suarez, I believe 3 for Busquets and 2 for Toto Avilas, although I might have those backwards. And then you can now tack on 3 games for Luis Suarez, which will be relevant to the rest of our conversation. And that will be the extent of the fallout from the post Leagues Cup final loss. Okay. A couple other things I wanted to mention. International break, as we talked about, a couple injuries. It sounds like David Ruiz, Fafa Picault, both may have gotten knocks on international duty. We're not sure what the long-term ramifications of those are yet, but there's a chance they're not available for Inter Miami this weekend. And then Telasco Segovia and his Venezuelan team eliminated from World Cup qualification. They needed a win in their last game, and they lost. So Venezuela out, and then I don't know. That's it for the international break. That's all I got for quick hitters.
I mean, that's more than enough, right? That's a lot of talking points, and Inter Miami keeps us busy even when the football is not going on. So I'm glad that the football is going to be back this weekend. I think it's time that Inter Miami makes redemption for the Seattle loss. But in the meantime, there's plenty of stuff that we can discuss, starting with what are you even doing with this team this season, right?
Sunday, we did an episode where we talked about what this season has been so far. And I think we talked about some high moments, but a lot of moments that were not as good as the 2024 season. And then we talked about how the 2024 season probably wasn't good enough either. And we finished by giving it sort of a 4+1 out of 10, that +1 being for an incredible Club World Cup. But if you exclude that, it's a 4 out of 10. And so the point of this episode is what can Inter Miami do over the course of the rest of 2025 to turn that 4 out of 10, 4+1 out of 10, into an 8+1 out of 10 or a 7+1 out of 10, or like as high as they can go. And so that's the first question. Inter Miami has 9 regular season games left, 27 potential points, which could take them to 73 if they swept the table. And then, of course, they have the MLS Cup, and they could win that as well. And that's all that there is left for this Herons team. What is success for Inter Miami the rest of the way?
Winning the MLS Cup has to be it. They have to win it. If you don't win that, if you only just win the Supporter Shield, it's the same as last season. And I think the expectations are much higher than last season. So for me, success in whatever fashion it happens, whether we play well or not, whether we make it to the playoffs, crawling through, or we finish top of the Supporter Shield, in the end, we have to find a way to win that MLS Cup. And that, for me, will be the only way that this season can be called a success. Inter Miami wanted to win trophies. Before we started the season, we did a massive 5-hour-long episode where we got on multiple different creators. And one of the questions that we asked them was, how many trophies will Inter Miami win this season? And I think there were very few, if any, who said Inter Miami is going to win just one trophy. So this was a season everyone expected to win multiple trophies. That has not happened. And that in itself is a bit of a failure or a letdown. And now that we only have 2 trophies left, I would say 1.5, because the Supporter Shield is, well, it is what it is. I think Inter Miami needs to win it no matter what.
Well, I think if Inter Miami wins the Supporter Shield this year, it means something, because it means that they finished on a really high note. It means that they did prove that they can keep up with anyone in the MLS. And I don't think that's something that should be overlooked for a team that has not achieved many of its goals this season. I get that no one will be, how do I put this? I think if Inter Miami wins the Supporter Shield, we'll come on here and celebrate it as a huge win.
Obviously.
And so,
as a win, I don't think it will be a huge win. I think it will be a win.
Well, we haven't had many of those, so it might just feel huge.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, like I think it'll be a huge accomplishment, especially because in the way that they will have to do it, which will be coming from behind, playing a ton of games in succession in short periods. Like they're going to have to climb the table. They're sitting in 6th place in the East right now. So you're going to see every single game. It's going to feel like a chase. And then if they actually accomplish it, it's going to feel like, wow, we really did this sprint and finished 1st place. I think that's going to be a great feeling. But I think you're right. Without the MLS Cup, there's just no way you can classify this season as a success, given everything that's gone on. And maybe that's unfair. So maybe I'll restate that. I think if you win the Supporter Shield and you absolutely make yourself proud in the MLS Cup playoffs, I could still maybe find a way to find it successful. But for an Inter Miami team that has this much talent to both make us proud and lose feels like a really thin line to try and walk. So I think almost, without just trying to be too catchy, too headline inducing, you have to win the MLS Cup.
Winning the Supporter Shield in this season especially feels difficult because the East is absolutely stacked. And we've already talked about the points. A lot of teams will need more than 45 points to actually make it into the playoffs from the East, which in past seasons has not been the case. So it is going to be difficult. And if we end up achieving that, it's going to be a big feat. Absolutely. but I think there's a certain completion of the adventure when you win the MLS Cup. The Supporter Shield feels like you've done well, but haven't gone all the way. And the MLS Cup seems like the culmination of a great season. So, in an ideal world, we win both. But I'll be honest with you, Scotty, I don't see Inter Miami winning either. And that's me being
Well,
pessimistic,
we'll come
but
back to that.
yeah.
We'll come back to that. No, and maybe the timing of it sort of matters because we are going to have this mad dash for the next 6 weeks trying to either win or it's going to eventually become obvious we're not going to catch up. And if that happens, it'll be real disappointing, but then we can kind of try and place some hope on the playoffs. If you go through this mad dash and you accomplish the feat, which would be winning the Supporter Shield or at least finishing first in the East, that'll be like a really fun time because it'll mean Inter Miami's winning game after game after game after game after game after game after game. They have 9 games left. If they really want to win the Supporters Shield, they probably have to win 7 of them, maybe at least 6 of them, probably. So it's going to feel really good at the time, and I don't want to diminish that because I think it's easy for us to say now, Supporters Shield doesn't matter. But if we had won the CONCACAF Champions Cup, we wouldn't care about it now. But we didn't. So now this is a chance to like make up for it. You know what I mean? So,
But it's kind of sad though, isn't it? And I'm not saying that the Supporter Shield doesn't matter at all. I completely agree with you. A trophy is a trophy and I'll celebrate it with all my heart. But I think it's still slightly grasping at straws when the expectation set at the start of the season were you win every single tournament that you're in. And again, that's not possible in 99 out of 100 seasons. So I completely get your point, and I think I'm behind you when you say that the Supporter Shield is still important. We are going to win it, but I feel like it's consolation, which is not a bad thing. It is still consolation to the expectations that this Inter Miami team has set itself.
you know what
That's, I
else
think, a
is?
right way to put it.
Yes. And I think even if you win the Supporter Shield, this can be a failure of a season. Like I think that's totally in play. Whereas if you win that and the MLS Cup, I think almost it becomes a success by default. The other thing about winning the Supporter Shield is just like last season, if you win the Supporter Shield, you establish yourself as the best team in the league through the course of the regular season. You have something to hang on to that we are actually a very good team. And so even though last season they fell in the first round of the playoffs, they got upset in painful ways. They still came into this season thinking we can go win everything. Whereas if you finish third in the East and you lose in the quarterfinals of the playoffs, we are like really looking at overturning the whole roster and new everything from the coaching staff to the front office to everything. So like it could really be like a salvation point for a lot of people at the club right now if they're able to pull that off. And then, of course, as you get into to October 18th, which is the last day of the regular season, if they are able to pull it off, we will feel like champions that night, or maybe the game before, whenever the actual award is finalized. But then you just go into the playoffs, and that's a separate 6-week sort of ordeal going into early December, where they're going to have to not just play, but beat the best teams in the league game after game after game for 5 wins in 5 games, maybe 6 if you go into 3 games in that first round. But that's going to feel like a whole new season, I think, because it's a fresh start. Everyone is one bad play away, one yellow card away, one missed opportunity away, one, give up a goal away from having your whole season go. It's pins and needles from that point on. But man, it would be really special if we made it through.
Yeah, I guess so. I think the playoffs in itself is a completely different beast. So when you say that Inter Miami goes into the playoffs winning the Supporter Shield, I mean we've seen it last season, right? We were the clear favorites. We were better than probably everybody else in the league the entire season, won the Supporter Shield, but completely the tone changed in the playoffs. New York Red Bulls, who weren't that good in the regular season, were quite beatable across the board, ended up getting to the final. So of the East, right? So it's easy saying that you can get to the playoffs, but I think the playoffs is a completely different game. And honestly, there's a certain solace in that because no matter how bad we've been throughout the regular season, if you go into the playoffs with a certain mindset and you completely forget about what has happened over the last 9 months, we can actually make a run in the playoffs. And this Inter Miami team has shown that they're good with tournaments. So maybe all that experience of losing in the semifinal, then losing in the final, means that the next time we're in a tournament sort of a situation, which is the MLS Cup, we finally get all the way this time and actually win it. So we'll see what happens there. But I will say this, up until this point in the Supporter Shield race, Inter Miami has not looked like the best team. I think you and I can, I think, name three other teams who looked more deserving to win the Supporter Shield. However, if Inter Miami from this situation with 9 games remaining ends up winning the Supporter Shield, I don't think anybody can deny that they didn't deserve it because it would take a monumental effort and a run of games and wins that is very difficult to pull off in the MLS, which will eventually result in Inter Miami winning the Supporter Shield. So yes, at this point in time, Inter Miami may not be deserving of the Supporter Shield. At this point in time, it may not look like Inter Miami can win the Supporter Shield. But if you put together a good string of 9 games back to back, winning everything or at least as much as possible, and getting to that 70-point mark, which I think should be enough to get you through to the Supporter Shield, I think that in itself will be a massive feat and something that we should celebrate. Whether that comes or not will depend on what your expectations for the season are, but you in no way can diminish that achievement. Having accomplished that, I think the playoffs is a completely different conversation. And form at that point in the regular season doesn't really matter once you get to the playoffs. It's all about playing each game for its own merit.
Yeah, and as we saw last year, Inter Miami played really well against some of the best teams in the league, and it was the one team they struggled with all year that they just happened to be matched up with. We will talk about the MLS Cup playoffs at the second half of this episode, but let's go one by one. And let's start with the Supporter Shield. Inter Miami sitting on 46 points at present through 25 games. They have 27 potential points. That could take them up to 73 over the course of the rest of the season. Of course, that would require them to win 9 of their last 9. And considering there's a road trip to New York City FC, there is zero chance they're going to win 9 of 9. But they can still get to mid to high 60s realistically. They'd have to play very well. They'd have to beat a couple really good teams. But 65, 66, 67 points, not really off the table. It's not even an unreasonable ask for a team with this much talent. And if they weren't smashed together like this, you'd almost consider it plausible or maybe even probable. Inter Miami at this point last season got 21 of their last 27 points. They had 3 draws in there. So if they repeated that feat, they'd be on 67 points. And that might be enough to win the Supporter Shield. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. And again, the last 9 games they played in the MLS, they got 17 points. So that would take them up to 63 on the season. Probably not good enough to win the Supporter Shield, but maybe we're looking at second or third place in the East. And we can talk about the standings in a second. Let's go game by game for the rest of the season. Kind of talk about what it would take for Inter Miami to make this happen and where we think they might end up points-wise, and then we can talk about how that would fit in with the rest of the bracket or table. First game this weekend at Charlotte at Bank of America Stadium. I don't know if you know this because most MLS fans maybe who aren't paying attention to the rest of the league wouldn't. They are the hottest team in MLS right now.
Yeah.
They have won 8 straight games in the MLS. 8 straight
Is
games.
it 8? Yeah, because they had a poor Leagues Cup run, right? But they still won, I think. They won the last 5 since, and then they have been doing really, really well. Wilfred Zaha, I don't know how involved he's actually been in turning around their fortunes, but since the last time that we played them, and I think we beat them this season, you're the one with the memory and the stats. So Since then, I think Inter Miami or Charlotte has really turned their fortunes around, and they're above Inter Miami in the table.
Correct. They are third in the table. Inter Miami beat Charlotte, I believe, the third game of the season. It was after a red card on Inter Miami. It was Oscar Ustadi gets a red card. And then Tadeo Allende, right at the beginning of the second half, has sort of breakaway, gets a goal, and we get out of there 1-0 despite that first half red card. But that was in the early part of the season where Inter Miami was winning every game. It has certainly not been a smooth sailing ride for Inter Miami since then. And that's the sort of form that Charlotte is in right now. Last year, we also went on the road to beat Charlotte in Bank of America Stadium. That was a Kramaski 85th minute goal that gave us a 2-1 victory. And I can remember Dean Smith, their coach, last year, sort of looking at the scoreboard in disbelief that his team, who had been playing so well, was somehow losing that game. I don't think anyone can call this a win or like an easy win for sure, considering the form of Inter Miami, considering some of the injuries, considering the depth, and considering how good Charlotte has been lately. They have really hit their stride. How are we feeling about it? I mean, I feel like saying 3 points is almost ridiculous. It can happen,
I will
but to predict
say,
it seems ridiculous.
to play devil's advocate, the teams they've played haven't necessarily been the top teams in the league. New England, Red Bulls, yes, Salt Lake. They beat Cincinnati, who got a red card. Toronto, DC. So the 8 games they won back to back, Atlanta, it hasn't necessarily been against the best opponents, but you still have to put in a result and get the result. And they managed to do that. It's a team that's playing with a lot of confidence, and I think Inter Miami coming out with a draw in this game should be more than happy because we aren't playing necessarily that well, which is weird given that if the Seattle game had actually gone in our favor, we would have said Inter Miami is having a great season already. So I think it's going to be a competitive game, but to be on the safe side, I think Inter Miami is going to draw this one.
Moving forward to the following Tuesday, so very short turnaround, they're going to play a home game against the Seattle Sounders. By the way, I should remind everyone these next 3 games will all be without Luis Suarez, who, whatever you want to say about his impact on the field this season, probably is your second most likely goal scorer. So it is a loss. It is making it more difficult, in my opinion, to score goals. He will also miss that Seattle game. That Seattle team just thoroughly handled Inter Miami, and even though it was close, and in this game they'll have to deal with the travel and they'll have to deal with staying at the hotel and the 8-hour flight and all that stuff. They certainly have a blueprint on how to beat this Inter Miami team. I don't know if you can chalk that up for 3 points, although I do kind of expect Inter Miami to win that game.
I think we're going to win that game.
I think you might be right.
I think there's going to be sorry, I think there's just going to be a fire in our belly to do the right thing. And after that result against Seattle, which was sort of embarrassing both on the pitch and off the pitch, there's going to be a desire to turn things around. So I think we win that game. Sorry.
Yeah, especially if they don't get 3 points against Charlotte. Then I think it starts to get difficult from a minutes perspective because you get 2 games. I think most professional athletes are ready for that. But then 4 days later, Saturday, you play DC United. That's next Saturday. That's a home game. You would expect them to get 3 points there. But then they turn around Wednesday at NYCFC. That's at Citi Field, so not quite a Yankee Stadium, but basically it's a baseball stadium. Inter Miami never beats NYCFC under any circumstance, home or away. So I almost feel like you can just chalk off 2 points from that game just right away.
Yeah, not winning. Absolutely not. Probably draw, but not winning.
That will be the game that Suarez comes back, by the way. Toronto FC 3 days after that. So that'll be the NYCFC games on a Wednesday. 3 days later, they go on the road to Toronto. Last season, we did rotate for that game. Late in the season, it was after we had already clinched the supporter shield. So we rotated, and Campana came on in the 93rd minute. Or he came on, and then in the 93rd minute, he got the winner, 1-0. I don't know if that's going to be an easy game, even though this Toronto team's not particularly good. It is a road trip in the MLS in Canada, and it's going to be after some real travel up until that point.
Yeah, I'm trying to fix my internet, so apologies if it's coming out to be a delayed audio. I hope you guys can still hear me. But I think we beat Toronto, Chicago, and New England. Those are, I think, three easier games in this run, and I would expect Inter Miami to get the 3 points in all three of them.
Yeah, well, that does bring the next two, which I think are maybe must win, should win games, two home games. But again, we're dealing with a team that is going to be playing every 3 days, whereas the rest of their opponents are going to have weeks off, the whole week off. Chicago Fire on September 30th. That's a Tuesday, and then Saturday, the New England Revolution. Should be 3 points in each of those, but again, you now have to consider how tired they're going to be. Every team will have played 3 games in that period. We're going to be playing 7 games in that period. So it's a lot of soccer, and it really is a lot to ask of these guys, especially when we, as we've talked about many times, don't have the depth and rotation, and we sort of ask our best players to do a lot of the work. And then the following week is the international break for October. That's October 11th at Atlanta United. I'm sorry, home versus Atlanta United. I've heard that Messi maybe won't go on international duty for that, so we will probably keep Messi. But you're talking about a lot of guys being missing: Talasco Segovia, Fafa Picault, Rodrigo De Paul, potentially Noah Allen, Ian Frey, David Ruiz, Santi Morales. That Atlanta game is at home. You would like just looking at it, you'd think, okay, we'll win that game. Atlanta's not very good. But when you talk about the lack of depth, when you talk about potentially missing some of your important players in Segovia and DePaul, I don't know if that's an automatic victory for Inter Miami at that point. And if it's not, let me rephrase this. If Inter Miami is out of the Supporter Shield hunt by that point, and it's almost like it doesn't matter at all, I can really see that game not going Inter Miami's way.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one, especially without players like Noah Allen, Segovia, some of the fringe players. And sometimes it's the fringe players that hurt a team. Losing the fringe players hurts a team more than losing the actual superstars. I think that's going to be a tough one for Inter Miami. And it's all going to come down to how we've done the previous games for us to even think about whether this game matters or not. I agree with you. It might not be as straightforward as it may look on paper. Atlanta, a team that's probably not playing for much at that point in the season, and I would expect them
Well,
to have almost. Are they in contention to finish in the playoff spots?
no, but the last thing they can do is beat Miami on the
Be
way
into
out.
Miami.
Yeah.
So that's a dangerous team regardless. And this was a team that was touted to be top three in the league when the transfer window culminated, with everyone lauding them for how good their transfer window was. So maybe they just want to go all out and beat into Miami, but I don't think it's going to be that easy for us to win that.
And then finally on the road at Geodis Park in Nashville, that Nashville team is pretty solid.
Very
So
solid.
Inter Miami can go get 3 points. They can certainly go get one, but I think expecting them to get three is a tall task. So the teams they play across the board are not necessarily super high on the table, but Charlotte and Seattle are in excellent form in ways that they weren't, and we weren't talking about it like this 2 months ago. Nashville seemed 2 months ago like the only really, really good team on the rest of our schedule, and it turns out Charlotte and Seattle have really stepped up. And then we can talk about NYCFC and how Inter Miami never has success against them. We could talk about that Atlanta United game where we're missing a bunch of guys, and all of a sudden, it looks like a serious schedule, not a cakewalk to the final. So there's nine games, and I'll give you a second to count them up. But like, what would you predict right now for a points total?
I think if we're lucky, so that's 9 games, 27 points. If Inter Miami plays out of their minds, I would say maybe over 20 if we're really, really good and get into a good run of form. But I don't expect us to reach more than 17 points. I think getting 17, 18 points would be very good on this schedule, especially given that we're playing back to back. There's going to be a couple of games where you lose players. And honestly, Inter Miami hasn't looked like a team this season that can beat anyone, or doesn't go into games looking like the favorites. And it really depends what kind of Inter Miami shows up, what our team selection is, if we make mistakes during the game. So it's not given. I'm going to say it's going to be around 17 points.
Nick Smith in the chat says 5-2-2. That would be 17 points. You say
Yeah.
17 points. I went on and I said 16 points. I think they'll probably drop another 2 points somewhere along the lines, maybe earn a draw that we weren't expecting. And if they do that, we'll go with 17. That'll put them at 63 points. Right now, Philadelphia's at 57. They're going to finish above 63 points. I'm not sure anyone else in the Eastern Conference is going to finish above 63 points. Cincinnati, currently in second, has 5 games left, and they got 52. So they would need to have a really strong finish to pass that 63 mark. That almost feels like where we're heading. Inter Miami finishes second with 62, 63, 61, 64, somewhere in there, low 60s. They finished second in the Eastern Conference to Philadelphia, and maybe third in the Supporters' Shield table to San Diego, which, acknowledging that we are incredibly spoiled as Inter Miami fans in this era, it's hard to argue that's a bad season. But also, considering the expectations and the talent on the roster, it does also feel like a letdown. I don't know. What do you think?
For the expectations that we set ourselves, I think that'll be bang on point. Because I said if we finish third or fourth in the league overall, I place for Inter Miami to be. It all depends on what happens in the playoffs, because that can spoil the entire feeling around this club. Going into the season, I didn't expect Inter Miami to win the Supporters' Shield. I didn't think Inter Miami needs to win the Supporters' Shield to actually have a good season. So in that case, if we finish second in the East, third overall, I think that's fair enough. But given that we've not been able to achieve some of our other objectives, not getting the Supporters' Shield would be another big blow to the expectations. And that is where I think is going to be disappointing for a lot of Inter Miami fans. That before this, if we had won the Leagues Cup or won the CONCACAF Champions Cup, you could have easily said to yourself, it's fine. Finishing third in the Supporters' Shield is actually fantastic, given that we've had so many games this season. But having not completed any of those objectives and not met those expectations, I think the goalposts have sort of shifted. And Inter Miami needs to go out and do whatever they can to actually win the Supporters' Shield for us to feel good about it. It's interesting because that would be contingent on how we do in the playoffs. So if we do well in the playoffs, then it doesn't really matter how we do in the Supporters' Shield. And if we don't do well in the playoffs, it's going to be a disastrous season. So I don't think my feelings will finally come to fruition until we know how Inter Miami does in the playoffs.
Yeah, of course. But again, it's all relative, because in the Club World Cup, that was the only thing that mattered at that period of time. And now we look back on it, and it's just a +1 to the record keeping for the season. The CONCACAF Champions Cup was all that mattered at that time. And of course, now we didn't win it. We have to sort of find ways to make up for it. So it's the same thing with the Supporters' Shield. If they don't win it, they will be probably rightfully criticized. And if they do win it, I think we should make sure we celebrate them. The one thing I do want to say about this is the Supporters' Shield has always felt like a depth competition. You have to play a lot of games in short succession and a lot of midweek games. Can you bring guys off the bench? Can you rotate? Can you have young guys step up and provide you that game-saving save from a goalkeeper or a defender, or the game-winning goal late that helps you secure either an extra point or an extra 2 points? We saw that so many times last season, and we have talked about Leo Alfonso and Kramaski and Leo Campana's big moments. And we had moments where players across the roster came through for this team that delivered an extra point or an extra 2 points that gave Inter Miami not 67 points, but 74 points. They won the Supporters' Shield, and they broke the points record. This team doesn't have that same depth and doesn't use that same depth. It's entirely self-inflicted. So I also think in a real way, even if they, like, this team feels like a 65-point team, 62-point team, whatever. So if they hit that, that's like hitting what I would expect from this roster. But also it's entirely self-inflicted that they don't have guys off the bench that can deliver. They don't have guys that they can rotate Suarez out of the lineup, or Messi, or you know, Busquets or whoever, right? And they don't have a philosophy of doing that. So it's like, it's almost like you still had the expectation of winning the Supporter Shield because you had the tools. You gave them up because you thought you could have success without them. But that means you still have to stay at the standard of what the expectations were when you had all the tools. So I almost feel like it's unfair to let them off the hook for not winning the Supporter Shield.
I think there's two aspects to this. First is exactly what you said. This is self-inflicted. And we can have a conversation about how we should go about achieving success over the next 9 games. And a lot of those talking points are going to be exactly that. Use all the pieces in a way that you haven't before. Make sure that you're making the most of the entire roster depth. Switching things around with players, playing every single person and utilizing the talent that is on the squad. So in that sense, Inter Miami has 100% underachieved, and we should be disappointed. The second aspect of it is we've already played as many games as we did last season, or close to that, and Inter Miami is playing a lot more games. So I feel like we went into the season knowing that we're going to play that extra tournament of 3 games with the Club World Cup, ended up being 4 games. We knew that we wanted to go far in a lot of those tournaments. We tried to recruit accordingly, but it almost felt like we drove the hammer straight on our foot by not utilizing the squad in the way that we should have, and by continuously running the same players into the ground, which has, I think, led to a lot of the issues that Inter Miami faces today. So I think you're absolutely right in that. Despite the fact that we've played a lot more games, despite the fact that these players have utilized a lot more minutes, it's all how we have utilize this entire roster, how we have used some of the substitutions, the players, the fringe players, and it's self-inflicted, and that's the word that I'm going to take away from it.
And not even just use, but moving on. Like, this roster is not as deep as it was the day they signed Alan Obando.
Yeah.
And we talked about, I remember I went back and rewatched it when we signed Silvetti, because that's right when we signed Alan Obando as well. I'm sorry, when we first talked about signing Matteo Silvetti. We talked about how the roster was complete. Like, we talked about how the next move was maybe David Martinez in the summer leaves and we replace him. But for now, this roster is good. It's deep. You have plenty of options across the board. And all they've done since then is add Rodrigo de Paul and move on like 8 players. And so they don't have the depth. They don't have the quality of depth. And yes, Mascherano does not rotate particularly effectively, in my opinion. So not only is it not having the guys on the roster, but it's not using the guys that are still on the roster. So like, it's a two-way street. They can say now we don't have the roster or the depth to really go for the Supporter Shield, because 9 games or 7 games in 20 days or whatever it is a lot. But that's because you gave up all the pieces that were on your roster that you could have brought back, whether it was a Robert Taylor or a Matthias Rojas last season, or some of the center back
Julian
options. Julian Gressel. And even guys like Leo Afonso and David Ruiz and Fafo Bigo, who haven't gotten a ton of minutes this year. And so, like, it's self-inflicted. And so I think it would be a failure. Like, it feels unfair to say you have to win the Supporter Shield for this to be a success. But I also feel like you were the absolute clear favorite on January 1st to win the Supporter Shield. And also, the first game of the season, which was February 22nd, you were the absolute favorite to win the Supporter Shield, and you didn't come that close in the end because you took the players off the roster. So I think Inter Miami deserves some of the blame if they don't accomplish their goals. That goal.
I think most of the blame. Most of the blame. And what I'm taking away from this conversation is Javi Mascherano's coaching style is not conducive to going the long run. He might do really well in tournaments. He might be able to pull the team together in knockout games. But when it comes to playing the long game, where the whole season matters, where you have to deal with adversity, where you cannot rely on every single game on your best player, when you have to rotate players around, when you have to use the youth, Javi Mascherano has not done any of that this season. And that, I think, was one of the USPs of an Inter Miami team under Tata Martino. The fact that we were able to play the long game and show over the course of the entire season despite a couple of results not going our way, that Inter Miami deserved to win the Supporter Shield. We set the points record. There was a lot that Inter Miami set themselves up for success with by doing certain things last season that we've just not replicated this season. I think a large portion of that is how the coach approaches the roster, how he approaches games, how he deals with league play. And yeah, you could have won a trophy or two, which we didn't in knockout tournaments. But I think over the league, over league play, we've actually been quite poor. And honestly, if Inter Miami finishes fourth or fifth by the end of the or by the end of the regular season, I wouldn't be surprised because that's the level of play that we've demonstrated in the league.
Okay, let's talk about the MLS Cup because like we're gonna rightfully like people keep saying that the Supporter Shield doesn't matter, but we are going to be critical of them if they don't win the Supporter Shield because they made a lot of
Absolutely.
decisions that led them
But
to be
here's
in
the
a bad
thing,
spot
right?
for it.
And we can maybe end the conversation about the regular season with this. But would you be surprised if Inter Miami ends up fourth in the regular season in the East?
A little bit, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Inter Miami. In the MLS Cup, matchups I think are as important as anything. We saw that last year. We had some epic games against the Columbus Crew. The Columbus Crew lost in the first round. We didn't get that semifinal matchup. Instead, in our first round game, we had to play the one team that gave us trouble all season in Atlanta. I remember like a week and a half before the playoffs last year, and it was still between four teams who was going to get that number 9, those 8 and 9 spots.
If
And
only
then
we got
ultimately,
BC.
we talked about how Atlanta United was the team we wanted to face the least. And then they made it through. They were the least likely at that time. They made it through. They played us. Brad Guzan went crazy, and they ended up beating us. So I think matchups are really important. But before we get to matchups, I think something that might be even more important is home field advantage. We just played the Leagues Cup, won every game at home, one game on the road. We got, not only did we lose, but we lost our heads and some of our reputation, and it was really ugly. How important is getting home field advantage, in your opinion, this season?
For this Inter Miami team, it's everything. It's everything. I don't trust them to win away from home. I do not.
Can I give you the
There's
numbers real
so
quick?
much. Yeah.
Okay. At home this season, they win 67% of their games. 14 wins, 4 draws, only 3 losses. On the road, they win only 41% of their games. 9 wins, 6 draws, 7 losses. So, yeah, that's like I think home field advantage is huge this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this team has demonstrated that they're the most comfortable when they don't have to travel the distances, when they don't have to play in opposition um turf. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that this Inter Miami team, the way they play artificial turf doesn't necessarily suit us. So if we play an opponent at their at their ground away from home and they have artificial turf, it sets us up for a little bit of a failure or a difficult time. But I don't trust this team to do a job away from
Okay.
home. I don't.
So here's my expectation. I'm just going to run through this. And of course, the Eastern Conference is very tight. 1, 2, 3, 4 points separating sides 3 through 7. So it could really end up in a lot of different places. Here's my guess. Philadelphia will come in first. Inter Miami will come in second. Cincinnati third. Charlotte and Nashville will be 4th and 5th. Columbus 6th. Orlando City 7th. I think there's a real chance Inter Miami plays Orlando City in the first round.
Don't want to play them. They're the Atlanta of this season. They have our number. We beat them once out of three games. That's literally what's going to happen in the playoffs. We're going to beat them once out of 3 times. So it's not the team I want to face by any means at all. And that's a team that I think is going to go far in the MLS Cup.
Of course, listen, like I said, there's a lot of teams right in a block there, so it doesn't necessarily have to be Atlanta. In that scenario, even if we beat Atlanta, we'd play Cincinnati second.
You mean Orlando?
if we beat Orlando
You
in the
said
first round, we
Atlanta.
play. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Well,
you said Atlanta.
Freudian slip there.
Same difference. Same difference. Honestly,
um,
same difference.
if Inter Miami does finish second, I think Cincinnati will finish third, or vice versa. Inter Miami playing Cincinnati in that second round, also not a matchup Inter Miami's had a lot of fun with this season.
And I'm not even trying to go through this by opposition. Cincinnati, obviously, a really, really good team,
Well,
and
the reason
I expect that to be a really fun matchup. But it's one that's tentative, and I don't think Inter Miami can beat Cincinnati as easily as they would be able to last season, or be guaranteed of a result. We're gonna have to really dig in and get the result.
I guess the reason why I'm saying this is because those are two teams Inter Miami very much struggled with. Not just from not just that they lost, but they were outplayed for much of all four games. I guess that home Cincinnati game was they were okay in, but for the other four games, they got thoroughly out. The other three games, they got thoroughly outplayed. If matchup is everything, and those are two potential teams we could face, you don't love that. Who knows what's going to happen with Charlotte and Nashville, two other teams that we might have to play. We still have those games coming up. Charlotte in great form, Nashville last game of the season. Like, I guess what I'm suggesting is I look at the playoff teams. Aside from Philadelphia, there's not a lot of confidence or success this season in facing those teams. Again, still a chance to change the narrative for Nashville and Charlotte either way. But I don't know if Inter Miami matches up well against a lot of these teams either, as we talk about the MLS Cup playoffs.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the seven teams that you mentioned, and honestly, they're all going to be difficult. Last season, it was like, oh yeah, we'll get through this team. This team, we should be favorites to win. In a one-game playoff, we should be fine against a certain team. But now they all seem tentative, like Atlanta. Like I wouldn't want to face any of these teams, honestly. And that's a really bad place to be at this point in the season. Maybe that changes. We go into really good form into the playoffs. We win 7 out of 9 games, and Inter Miami's bouncing and confident going into the playoffs. And that might make us feel different. But I think at this point in time, with the sample size that we've seen, obviously we haven't matched up well against a lot of these teams. But even then, even if there wasn't a history of us losing to some of these teams, I would still think Inter Miami would have to pull at least two or three brilliant moments from Messi or Jordi Alba or Suarez to actually be able to get through some of these teams. And God forbid we get an injury or there's a red card crisis or whatever. I think that just compounds in the issues that we might face against some of these teams. So I don't think it's guaranteed that Inter Miami goes far in the MLS Cup playoffs, and don't be surprised if we do not.
What I will say is I actually think Inter Miami can go on the road to Philadelphia and win if they get there, which would be a semifinal game in the scenario I envision in my head. And I also think they can beat any of the teams in the Western Conference, especially at home. So what I think that leads me to believe is Inter Miami is going to win the MLS Cup, or they're going to have an embarrassing exit early.
Yeah.
And I think if they make it to the semifinal, they can win the whole thing. And maybe would even be the favorites at that point to win the whole thing, especially if that final was at home, right? And I think San Diego is probably the only team that it wouldn't be at home against. So Inter Miami might be on the highest of highs, and we feel I don't even know if they win, we're going to feel great about the season, but we'll certainly feel great that day. But feels to me like there's a real chance it's like a quarterfinal loss, and maybe not even like a pretty one, and we finish with 12 points less than we did last season, and we don't have any other trophies, and that almost feels like it could be a disaster for Inter Miami, and not just the team, because again, by any measure, for a normal MLS team, this has been a great season, but considering the talent and the project, which was, again, to be the best team, not just in the MLS, but in the entire continent.
For me,
it's just really bad.
for me, that's the likely scenario. I don't think Inter Miami is going to have particularly a good end to the season. I will say, to end on a positive note, because we have been a little bit bleak as we normally do in midweek episodes. Inter Miami went into the
Only
playoffs
this
last
season.
season. Inter Miami went into the playoffs last season as clear favorites and got embarrassed by Atlanta. So I don't mind that Inter Miami is going into the or may go into the playoffs this season not as the favorites because that might actually work in our favor. And who knows, we may surprise everyone and actually end up going the distance. But being favorites in the playoffs doesn't really count for much. If you can show up over the course of the 6, 7 games that you're supposed to play in the playoffs to get to the final and win it, I think it's less than that. But if you can show up for those set of games in the playoffs, everything you've done before that completely gets wiped out. So form doesn't matter. Vibes, at least at the start of the playoffs, don't matter. So if you can go in, regardless whether you're the favorites or the underdogs, just put on a show and then we can see where Inter Miami goes from there. But I think the likely scenario is that we have a mediocre showing in the playoffs, and that's where I stand with it.
You would have to win 4 straight games, minimum, to win the MLS Cup, because you can lose a game in the first round and still win best 2 out of 3, but you'd have to win that third game in order to advance, and then you'd have to win the quarterfinal, semifinal, and then the MLS Cup final. Do you want to guess how many times Inter Miami's won 4 straight games this season?
0.
They had a 7-game winning
Once.
streak to start the season.
Once. Yeah.
Sorry, their first MLS game was a 2-2 draw. They got a red card from Totavilas early. They won 4 straight MLS games after that. And that's the only time they've won 4 straight games in any combination of competitions this season.
Yep.
So, yeah. Last topic before we go. And I guess the final question is, talk to me about potential scenarios, because we said so far 4 + 1 out of 10. I don't think it can get worse than that, in my opinion. Maybe you can think otherwise if you do, but like 4 out of 10 assumes they don't win the MLS Cup and they don't win the Supporters Shield. Where would you be in various scenarios? Like, how high would one of those or both of those take you over the course of this season?
I'll put it in more simple terms that my little brain can comprehend. um, in my mind, there are 3 scenarios. Inter Miami does really well in the Supporter Shield and then doesn't do well in the MLS Cup. So we win the Supporter Shield, let's say that, and we don't win the MLS Cup. I think the likelihood of that is 4 out of 10. I don't think we win the Supporter Shield. I think Inter Miami finishes 2nd or 3rd in the East. Inter Miami doesn't win the Supporter Shield and ends up winning the MLS Cup. I think the likelihood of that, in my mind, is slightly higher. I would say that's like a 50-50 chance. 5 out. Go surprise me, Inter Miami. Lionel Messi does his magic. The third scenario in my mind is Inter Miami doesn't win the Supporter Shield, Inter Miami doesn't win the MLS Cup. I think the likelihood of that is a 7 out of 10. So that for me is the likeliest scenario.
There, but
whatever. As I said, my little brain doesn't match with numbers, but I'm taking them as separate likelihoods, not one single likelihood. So yeah, the most likely scenario for me is the fact that Inter Miami is not going to win anything.
But okay, let's say they do. Let's say they win the Supporters Shield, they win MLS Cup. Where couldn't they get to this season? Like, let's say they just run the table from here on out. 9 straight wins in the regular season, 5 straight wins in the MLS Cup playoffs. They finished this season on a 14-game winning streak. How high do you think you could rate this whole season as a whole?
I think an 8.5 or a 9.
Do you still get the +1?
A 10 out of with the I think that's including the +1.
Okay.
Yeah, a 10 out of 10 season would have been winning the treble. So I think a half out of or a 9 out of 10 if you win the MLS Cup. Honestly, you don't even need to win the Supporters Shield. If you win the MLS Cup, then it's an 8.5 out of 9.
Yeah, give me the 8 + 1, and I would say that's a pretty strong way to finish the season. But 14 straight wins would be pretty impressive. Okay, last topic before we end it, because we haven't mentioned it much, and it has felt like something of an afterthought. Really, is that Inter Miami signed a new player, and he might play on
starting
Saturday
next game. Could you imagine a scenario where Inter Miami has Silvetti and Baltazar Rodriguez as their starting wingers, and we end up going on a tear and winning every single game here on out?
No,
No.
but I would love it.
I have
I
a
think
feeling Inter Miami does really well in the next 3 games without Suarez.
I almost
I just think that's the case.
I'm almost worried about that because then we're gonna like we as fans are gonna want
Yeah.
Suarez to not start, and he's 1,000% gonna go back into the starting 11. And so
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I almost like I I want us to win the next 3 games, but man, if that's how it goes down and then it just goes straight back to Suarez, it's gonna like talking about the culture of the locker room and the culture of the organization. Like it's gonna be
It's gonna be really toxic. Yeah.
it's gonna be hard to deal with. Matteo Silvetti, I think, has the maybe he doesn't, but a new signing has the ability to sort of like give the whole team a bounce. And I'm wondering if he does, and we'll hopefully see soon. It's weird to me that a new signing is coming in potentially with right other teams have 5 games left in the regular season and expecting them to be impactful, but Inter Miami has 9. They're going to play a lot of games in short succession. Do you think Silvetti will get an opportunity to have a real impact on this team? And do you think he will? And
If it's anything,
by impact, I mean affect how many points Inter Miami gets or affect winning in the playoffs.
I don't think so. I think with the way Baltazar's been integrated and used, and it's not the coaching staff's fault, he also has dealt with injuries and stuff. I think still that he's come in as a depth piece who's going to be used in from time to time in certain games, coming in the 60th, 70th minute. But I don't think he's going to impact the way Inter Miami plays or how many points we get. My understanding is that Inter Miami is going to continue to stick, and Javier Mascherano is going to continue to stick with the Allende Segovia pairing, and then use Silvetti and Baltazar Rodriguez as depth pieces. And what we've learned from Javi Mascherano is he relies on those players, and in the process of that, the reserve players don't necessarily have the opportunity to impact our play and our points and our wins the same way. So I don't expect it to change much.
Well, just because of some travel issues, we haven't actually had the chance to talk about this on the podcast. But Inter Miami's played like a 4-3-3 lately. It hasn't been that 4-4-2. And I do wonder if there's like a world where we end up getting a 4-3-3 where Yannick Bright and DePaul are sort of those dual eights, which is what it's looked like the last couple of games, if anyone wants to go look at the heat maps. And then you have sort of a left winger, which could be Silvetti. And like that would require taking Segovia and Baltasar and Allende off the field. But like I wonder if that's on the table. I would be surprised, but I would never want to write anything off with this crazy team.
What would you do with the two bozos in the back, though? That's still a
Chuckle
problem.
Brothers.
Right? The
Chuckle
Chuckle
Brothers.
Brothers. Yeah.
I don't. I would bench them and play Noah and Toto. That's what I would do. Give
They
them
need to
9
be
games to get
sold,
prepared.
man. They need to go as soon as possible.
Okay, let's end it there. Real Deal says, "What's the lineup moving forward in your opinion for a winning season?" You want to play this game real quick? And then
Yeah, let's do it. I always enjoy what's the lineup questions. So you want to start at the back?
No, you go
Rocco
first.
Rios
We'll
Novo.
each do it. Okay. Yeah.
Let's start goalkeeper Rocco Rios Novo. Do you want to go 1-1?
I think it has to be the start. Like I think it's gonna. Let me rephrase it. I
Are we
want
doing
to. I want
what
to keep
we
it
want?
somewhat realistic. Yes,
Okay,
but within
but-
realistic, like boundaries. Like you're not going to bench Suarez or Busquets because it's just not. It wouldn't happen. You know what I mean?
Can we do 2, please?
Okay. Yes.
I had
Okay.
a difficult time.
No, that's
I
fine.
had a difficult time
no,
on
that's
this
fine. Do what you
podcast. Let's
do. What you
do
want
2.
to do. Do what you want to
Okay,
do.
let's start with what we want, and then let's do what Javi Mascherano does. Or let's start with Javi Mascherano, and then let's do what we would do.
Actually,
Javi
let's do it
Mascherano.
this way. You give me your lineup that you want, and I will just critique it, and then we'll end the podcast.
Okay, perfect. Rocco Rios Novo in goal. He's looked a lot more confident, I think, has come into his own as a keeper. And for me, I think he's done more than Ostari has. So have him there. Ian Frey, right back. Toto Aviles, Noah Allen, centre back partnership. Jordi Alba is my left back. Any complaints there so far?
No.
Yannick Bright is the number 6. Sergio Busquets and Rodrigo de Paul is the 2 8s. I think that's a different setup from the 4-3-3 that we've seen, but that's the more important and impactful setup that we need. I love Yannick Bright. I like to see him be adventurous, but he has not played that outright destroyer role this season enough. And I think that's costing us. So play him as the 6, play De Paul and Sergio Busquets as the 2 8s. Lionel Messi on the right. I would play Baltazar Rodriguez on the left, maybe Fafa Pico on the left. Depending on if Silvetti's actually good in that wing role, him. But a winger on the left, essentially. And then Luis Suarez up top. That's my lineup.
You know what's sad? This is a real, like what you just said is an absolutely real, legitimate lineup you could put out there. And we should have done it.
And yet we're
in
never
April.
going to see it.
We should have done it in April and seen what it looked like. No, listen, I think Inter Miami has a lot of good players, and it's hard to get them all on the field. And so you kind of start from Messi and Suarez and Busquets and Alba and DePaul, and then kind of work your way from there. And I think there's a real chance that guys like Segovia and Baltasar don't fit into that rotation. I've said many times I'd like to see a 3-4-2-1. I think that fits your best players on the field. But
here's the thing, right? We're playing 9 games in how many days? 20 days? Well, slightly more than that. But if you're playing 7 games in 20 days, Segovia gets into the lineup eventually. And there's a lineup in which he can replace Rodrigo de Paul, he can replace Busquets, he can replace Bright.
I don't think we're going to rotate much.
That's the problem, though, right? That's the problem. And that's the talking point that we should end with. The fact that this team is so talented that the lineup that I said can be used in one game, and then you can have another lineup that might be actually really good in another game. So Segovia might be able to start in a different game. But it's all about the opponents that you play and the style that you want to play. But Javier Mascherano has not been able to demonstrate his ability to adapt to opponents and what kind of style he wants to play. Segovia is suited to a specific style. Yannick Bright is suited to a specific style. Rodrigo de Paul is suited to a specific style. A coach who has experience in the MLS, who's played against some of these teams, knows what style to bring out against which opponent. You have a base, and then you build the building on that base. This Inter Miami team has built the building, but there's no base. So,
I think we should end it there because this was supposed to be like an optimistic look at how Inter Miami can achieve success in 2025. And there will come a time where we're going to go through in depth all of the issues we had with the 2025 season, not just on the field, but off the field, and some of the decisions they made, both, player recruitment, culture, academy development, personnel, and playing style. But that probably is a conversation for the end of the season. For now, Inter Miami plays Charlotte in a game that, if they win, could kickstart the last portion of the season. And if they lose, I will let you complain about it, and I won't think about it. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. I know we were a little bit late with some technical issues. I know if you watched on YouTube, Saur's face and words may not have been linked up at all times. We are going to try and get that fixed by the next episode, of course. But thank you for putting up with us in the meantime. Saur, my friend, my co-host, any final words?
I'm glad football's back this weekend. I'm excited for Inter Miami to see what they do against Charlotte. I'll try to be optimistic, I promise. But it's been a tough week, guys. I'm sorry with the challenges that I faced technically, but I promise next time we come back, and we'll come back with a smile on our face and a skip and a hop and a jump in our step. And hopefully Inter Miami can get the 3 points and start off what's going to be a busy period for us. And there's a lot of episodes coming, so strap in.
All right, guys. See you 1 hour before kickoff on Saturday, as always, for the pregame show. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this, and have a wonderful day.